The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific. Yeah! It's Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host, Brian Mitchell.
Well, welcome to the Cartoonerific podcast, classic animated cartoons, and I am your host, Brian Mitchell. Well, lately I've been receiving a lot of emails and comments from people that want to learn animation, or they want to direct their children or their teenagers into what to do or what to study. And it's very interesting. Some of these people have been from the Los Angeles area, which is really the place to be because you got all these professionals around, and I'm sure that there's plenty of classes in different places, the Cartoonist Union, and in schools out there like Cal Arts or Art Center. But what I can say is if you want to do hand-drawn animation or even computer animation, it's always a good idea to learn to draw. And you can do that just from the privacy of your own home. Basically, there's so many books out there that you can get, and you can get those books from industry professionals, and it tells you a whole lot. But I know when I was a kid and I was growing up and I saw Casper the Friendly Ghost or Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse cartoons and stuff like that, I would try to get pictures of those characters and try to draw them, either tracing them or trying to freehand draw those characters, which is actually the best. But it's always good to kind of trace the character so you kind of get a feel how these things are constructed. And then you kind of go on your own and kind of do it freehand, and you learn proportions and stuff like that by that. I know people that got comic books. They went out and bought comic books that they liked with the art in it, and they would study that, and they would draw it, and they would trace it and try to recreate it. There's also these videos online. I mean, there's plenty of videos of Don Bluth drawing, but there's other artists on there. And I think that's always a good thing to do, is to observe some of these professionals drawing, because it kind of gives you a sense of the confidence of their line and how they're constructing the shapes together, which is very, very important. You can get a good sense. It's almost as good as being right next to the person drawing. And it's normally when these things are well done, you get a good view of the board where the person is drawing on, or they're drawing on a computer tablet or whatever. So those are the recommendations. One of the things, and it keeps coming up on these shows, is going back to the books. There were only a few books available when I was a kid. One that made a big impression on me was the animation book by Preston Blair, which was basically, it talked about animation a little bit, but it was more about constructing these characters, these cartoon characters. And what was impressive about that book was they looked like cartoon characters. They look like animated cartoon characters from MGM or Warner Brothers or Disney, without actually being characters from those films or studios. The reason why we bring up that book over and over again is because it a lot of people had it. I grew up with it. I got it from believe it or not, a store in Bethpage, New York, which was called Pergament, which is now out of business as far as the store goes. But basically, it was a hardware store with an art department, and they had art supplies there. And so this was one of the books in the racks. Years later, in the 70s, Preston Blair, who authored the book, came up with a part 2. And that was called How to Animate Film Cartoons. That was the name of the book. So that was the second part of that, which was more information, great information. Well, Walter Foster Art Books took those 2 books, put them together into a thicker volume, and reformatted it. And I believe you can buy it on Amazon or maybe some local book or art stores. Like I said, a lot of animation artists started off with that book. And the guest we have on today started off with that book, but he wasn't living in the United States. He was living in Brazil. And he got a hold of that book and he went to town and he ended up becoming a professional animator at a very young age for the likes of Don Bluth. Matter of fact, I was working for Don Bluth on a film called The Troll in Central Park animating, and he was working on the same film, but over in Ireland. His name is Sandro Cleuzo. He's a very fine animator. He's worked at Don Bluth, Disney, Warner Brothers, worked just about everywhere. But he's an incredible artist and a wonderful animator. And he's coming up next, so don't go away.
The Cartoonerific podcast is now available on Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Alexa, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Apple Podcasts, and many, many others. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. A new Cartoonerific podcast is uploaded every Friday. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Hey, well, what can I say about this gentleman? He and I were working on the same movie, but him across the pond, he was working out of Ireland for Don Bluth on The Troll in Central Park. I was working on that in Burbank, California for the same company. And he went on to do a lot of wonderful animation in different films. He was a directing animator on Don Bluth's Anastasia, and then he ended up going to Warner Brothers, working on The Iron Giant, and then he ended up at Disney working on Fantasia 2000, The Emperor's New Groove, Home on the Range, The Proud Family movie, Curious George, which was done, I believe, at Universal. He ended up animating on Enchanted, which has some really wonderful animation in it. And then he ended up animating on Princess and the Frog, a whole bunch of different movies, the Angry Birds movie. And then he did some wonderful animation on Mary Poppins Returns, which he won an Annie Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animation. So anyway, one of the more recent movies he worked on was Netflix. It was Spa Studios. Klaus is one of the animators on that. He is a mighty fine designer and a brilliant animator. Please welcome Sandro Cleuzo. Hi, Sandro. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on here. So tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get interested in animation? Where'd you grow up?
Okay, first of all, I'm Brazilian. I'm from Brazil. And I grew up here. This is my hometown. And I'm talking from Brazil, actually, from São Paulo, Brazil. Well, I started like every kid starts drawing. Every kid, they draw. So I did the same thing, watching cartoons on TV. And I remember when I was very little, here in this, I'm talking about the 70s, 1970s, right?
Right.
They used to show a whole afternoon of cartoons, all kinds of cartoons, American cartoons and Japanese mostly, and like Woody Woodpecker,
right?
Japanese cartoons and the Flintstones, all those Hanna-Barbera shows. Right. And I used to come just after school. I would have my lunch and go straight to the TV, and the whole afternoon I would say from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock,
right?
All cartoons. I would spend my whole afternoon watching those cartoons.
Oh, sure.
And Yeah, I used to draw them. I used to copy. I had paper and crayons, and I used to copy the characters. I remember my favorite was the Woody Woodpecker character.
Right.
And by the way, he was a very popular character here in Brazil, and it still is to this day. Very popular. Everybody knows this character.
Sure.
And I remember I used to draw him a lot, like copying from watching the TV.
Right.
And I could draw him very well, because when you practice like every day, you get better. So that's how I started, but watching cartoons and drawing all day. And I used to buy comic books a lot, and like especially Disney. I wasn't too much into superheroes like Marvel. I was more into the cartoony characters like the Disney comics,
Right.
And I used to copy those too, copy the characters. And then
how old were you when you started getting into that?
I think I was 9 or 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very, very early. Was very like a kid.
Right.
And then the time would pass. I would be continued practicing drawing, watching cartoons and comics. And I think it was when I was 14. I was I already done some comic books on my own characters, my own stories.
Yeah.
I would put a whole book together, like a cover from cover to cover, like the whole thing,
right,
with my own characters. And
cool.
Of course, not great drawings because I was still learning.
Right.
And the characters I came up with, they were basically, like Super Pig or Super Chicken. They were pretty much what I saw on TV. It was more copies than original,
Right.
But anyway, I did the comics and the way because I loved comics, And I was in school. I remember I was in school that day, and I had finished my assignment, and my friends were still working at the assignment, and I didn't have anything to do because I finished earlier my assignment that day. And my teacher came by, and I just got my drawings and started drawing, because I was waiting for my peers to finish.
Sure.
So I was drawing my comics, and my teacher came over and said, "Hey, Sandro, I like your drawings. Can I borrow your drawings, your books, your comic books?"
Right.
And I didn't know what I was 14 at the time, so I didn't know. I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." I just gave to her. I didn't ask anything. And what she did was she sent those drawings to this place here in Brazil, this studio that was very popular. It's still very popular today. It's called Mauricio de Souza. He's like the Disney of Brazil. Okay. Like his characters are very popular here. Everybody knows the characters. And he published comic books, animation, merchandising everywhere with the characters. It's a big studio.
Right.
So she sent over my drawings, my books, my comic books to him. And he called and said, "Hey, the kid has some talent. Let's give him an internship."
Oh,
so
wow.
I was offered an internship when I was 14 at this famous guy studio. Everybody wanted to work for him. It's like a big deal.
Sure.
So I was there at 14 years old. They gave him a desk, and I started my work there. That was the first time I was introduced to artists and like a studio environment. Was the first time because I never went to school for animation or drawing. I just learned on my own.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was the first time I was introduced to the business of art.
Right. Wow. Isn't that you must have been excited at the time, right?
It was very exciting.
Or were you frightened at the time? It goes both ways, I
was very happy and excited, and my whole family was very proud because it's we're talking about this studio where everybody wanted to work for.
Yeah,
and everybody would know who the creator was. This Mauricio,
right?
These guys were like a celebrity here in Brazil, so it was a big deal. So I was very happy. But what happened was, I'm telling this story because it's a negative that turned into positive. What happened was I was very, very young. It was my first job. I never worked before. It was my first job.
Right.
Wasn't even a job. It was an internship. They just paid for my my bus and subway to go there,
Right.
in the train,
Mhm.
and also for food. But they didn't pay a salary, okay? Because we're learning.
Right. Right.
So what happened was I was very young, and then I met one day. I was like drawing comics, right? That was the comic book department, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then I met this person who was from the animation department from the same company, and I had no idea they had an animation department.
Right.
And this person came over, and I don't know how, but I met her, and she said, oh, "Yeah, if you want, I'm an animator for this studio, but the studio is not here; it's another place. I can take you there."
Mhm.
And she took him over during lunchtime to the animation department of the same company.
Right.
And I was introduced to the animation desks, to the animation paper with the tag holes, and
Mhm.
and she grabbed a stack of a scene and flipped the drawings, and the character was moving. I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do comics anymore. I want to do this.
Sure.
So what happened is that, being young, being stupid, I didn't know anything about anything. When you went back to the comic book department, she took me back there. But before I went up to my room to continue my work, she stopped by this management office that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And she, without me asking for anything, she said to this guy, it was like an executive. He had a suit. He wasn't an artist. He was a different guy,
right,
with a lawyer's book in the back,
Sure.
And she said, "Oh, Sandro here. He wants to work in animation." And the guy said, "Okay, if he wants, just hire him," like that,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe that's how it works. I don't know. I was 14, stupid. I didn't know anything. So I went back to my room without knowing anything, without thinking too much,
Right.
And then the supervisor of the comic book department came over, and she asked me, "Son, can I see you?" She took me to her room, and she was the wife of the owner. She
Right.
was a very powerful person,
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was afraid of her. And she starts screaming at me. She screams, I heard you want to work in animation. You're not happy here. We'll give you a chance to be here. And she screamed at me. I was like, what happened? I didn't know what was happening,
Yeah.
I was fired from that job, from that studio. I was like,
right.
I can't be fired. My teacher got this for me. My family is happy. And
Right.
so I begged her to, give him a chance. And she said, no, just go home. You're not welcome here anymore.
Wow.
So
wow.
the next day I came back because I was like, I didn't tell my parents. I was afraid. I was ashamed.
Yeah.
So the next day I went back and I waited at the door for her to come in. And I begged her to, give me a chance. I'm sorry for what I did. I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry.
Right.
Because it wasn't me. It was this girl, this lady, the animator, who asked the guy to hire me. I didn't ask,
Right.
So it was her mistake. It wasn't my mistake.
Right.
But anyway, she didn't want anything to do with that. But for me, that was the best thing that ever happened, because
mm-hmm.
somebody came to me with a card with the number. Mm. It was a lady, but I don't remember her face. I don't know who she is.
Right.
She just came to me. She worked there. She used to work there.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Sandro, call this number here. This is the best animation studio in Brazil. Call this number. Try there."
Right.
Because everybody was very sympathetic to what happened to me,
Right. Right.
Because everybody heard that, I was fired for no reason. So, I was fired. So I went back home and I started doing my portfolio again. And I started doing some animation based on the Preston Blair book.
Yes.
That everybody starts with that.
That's all around the world, apparently, because everybody gets started on that. But that was the only thing around at the time, It
was my school. My school was that book.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
When I got there, I was like, I can't believe that this book exists,
Right. Just for, can I just stop for a second? Just for the audience to know what this is. There's a book called Cartoon Animation. I think it was originally called Animation. It was a thin book, maybe about 26 to 28 pages, maybe. Not a big book. But it was a big, thin book, and Walter Foster Art Books had it. And it was done in the 40s, and it was done with the original Disney characters and MGM characters like Tom and Jerry, and there were, the hippos in there, and the owl, and Mickey Mouse was even in there. And I think the lawyers for Disney and MGM came after Walter Foster and said, you can't put these copyrighted characters in the book. So Preston Blair, who authored the book, changed it and made the characters more generic. But then years later, there was a demand for the book, and he came out with a sequel, which was film cartoons. Mm-hmm. And now those two thin books have been combined into one thick book, which is cartoon animation. And it's still available, and you can go and buy it. So it's great stuff. I just had to do that as an aside. But pretty much everybody I've talked to, they've gotten started with that book, or those two books. And, it was invaluable because there was really nothing around at the time other than maybe some articles here and there, but nothing really telling you how they did animation. So I'm sorry. So go ahead. So
at the time we only had that book, and maybe I think The Illusion of Life, and maybe a couple of others.
Yes.
It's not like today you go to Amazon, you find all kinds of books.
Oh yeah, you got Eric Goldberg has a book, and Richard Williams has a book. They're both great books. Yeah. Nancy Beeman.
Yeah.
Nancy Beeman has a book. You should do a book.
Yeah, I should.
So anyway, you went back to that book, and
yeah. So I based on the book, I did some animation on my own,
Right.
And so and I called the number that this lady gave me,
mm-hmm.
and I talked to somebody there, and I went there to show my portfolio to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved. They said, "Oh, okay, I'll give you an internship here for a month,
right,
and see how it goes."
Yeah.
And that was the animation studio. And then I started, and there was two guys in the room doing a commercial, but they were like, I could see they were very frantic. They were like, they had to finish the commercial. Right. They couldn't teach me anything. They couldn't talk to me much.
Right.
And they gave him like two extremes, two keys for me to in between. Say, just in between this to practice it,
Right.
From the commercial. And I did in between there. I showed them, they flip, hey, it works.
Right.
Let's give him more. So I started working on the commercial the very first day of my internship.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I was working, because they were using my in-betweens,
Yeah.
So after a month, I was hired full-time as an assistant. So it was my first time working animation. And it was great because that studio is to call Briquet Films. Okay. And the owner was Louis Briquet, his name. So that's why it was Briquet Films.
Sure.
And it was a very, very important studio at the time. Mm-hmm. And they did most of the commercial, the top companies, like commercials for top companies, Coca-Cola, all the big companies, the major companies, the commercials, animated commercials are done by this studio.
Right.
So I got to meet all the top animators, because they were freelancers. They would come to pick up work.
How many people did they have over there? Do you know?
They had three guys. They had two assistants and one animator. But the funny thing was, my first week there, the boss fired everybody. Yeah, wow. Because I think they want more money. I don't know what happened, but they fired, and I was the only one. I was alone. I was thinking, my God, how am I gonna learn those guys? There's nobody here to teach me,
Right.
And I had to wait for some animator to come by to pick up some work, so that I could ask them.
Right. Right.
Some, just to talk and show my work.
Wow.
So I didn't have anybody to learn from, and the boss wasn't a good. Well, he wasn't a good animator. He was just the owner. He was he was an artist, an animator, but not like a top guy.
Right.
So I didn't have anybody to learn from, and the animators who were freelancers who would come by to pick up work. Most of them didn't want to talk to me or teach me because they were afraid of teaching somebody to take their jobs. Yeah. That kind of thing. So I had to learn by myself. And the way I learned was by studying a lot, of course, but also in between for them.
Right.
So I would take the scene, the keys, I would flip, I would try to, as I work, I would try to understand the charts,
Right.
the spacing, why they did that, or I was trying to think, analyzing their work.
Sure.
So by in betweening for them and doing cleanup work, I would. That's how I learned. And then, of course, at the time, I'm sure you remember the VHS. Had the VHS machine that we could stop the frame, freeze the frame.
Oh yeah.
So I would get some Disney films and go frame by frame studying. And then I found a place that had a Super 8, like sequence from Disney films in Super 8.
Yeah.
Like a sequence from The Rescuers, a sequence from Peter Pan,
Yeah.
So that's how I studied frame by frame. I got a moviola, and people don't know this today, but
they don't.
That's how they don't know this.
Yeah, I mean that's why I did it. I had Super 8 film, and I had a little moviola, and I would do it frame by frame and study it.
It was amazing to learn that way.
It is, because you could do that with VHS. They actually made players that they had like a jog wheel on it, so that you could kind of turn it around and basically would just do frame by frame by frame. Yeah. The only problem with that is that with VHS, it was adding another frame like every 3 frames.
Oh, yeah, that was the problem. Yes.
Yeah. So because television doesn't work at 24 frames a second, it works at like 29 and 9. It's 29.97. It's almost 30 frames a second. And so when it has one of those frames that it's kind of fudging, it's basically it's combining 2 images at once on one frame, and that's not. But you could still kind of figure it out. It was pretty close on the timing. So yeah,
true. That's how I had to learn, by doing that.
Yeah,
and then after a while doing all these jobs, and my boss, I would do tests, my own tests, animation tests,
right.
And my boss saw that I was improving, and he would give me he started giving me smaller commercials, like commercials for the region, for local commercials, something not very important,
Right.
The important things would be done by the top animators, but he started giving me like smaller jobs,
right.
Commercials to animate, and little by little I became an animator. And then I started animating the top commercials, the important commercials too.
Right, because you're learning. You were learning and
I was
improving.
Getting better. I was getting better. And,
how old were you when you started working over there? Were you
15?
15. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then after 4 years doing commercials, I decided, you know what, this is great, but I need to work in feature. I want to make a character think and acting and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to work in a film.
Right.
Because I was learning so much about, but you get to a point where you don't learn anymore, because when you do commercials, it's just like a character presenting a product, and there's not much room for acting and dialogue, that kind of thing,
You know what I find you learn in commercials is the fact of figuring out how to get things done a certain amount of time. I think that's
exactly. That was very good. Yeah.
Yeah. And that probably helps you somewhere along the way with the character animation too, because when they start counting the footage and they say, "Oh, you only got 3 feet this week," you know, it would help you there. But
we had to do things fast.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah.
I've learned to do things fast. I've learned to do things fast and then be able to take my time. And yeah.
But also you learn. You in the commercials, you learn in a smaller studio. You learn all the facets of animation, not only one thing.
Right.
You learn to do layouts, design, even the camera. I used to, the rostrum camera. I used to sometimes help shooting the scenes.
Sure, because it's a small studio.
Yeah,
small studio.
Exactly.
So you end up. Sometimes you'd be pulled off, and they say, can you help us out with some painting? Have you ever done that?
Yeah. No, I never done that.
Never did that? I did that.
On a cell, never did it.
When I first started at Don Bluth Studios, which was in Burbank, it was Sullivan, it was West Olive Inc., that's what they called it. Yeah. It was basically when I went in, I was hired as an animation trainee.
Right.
And then, but the first day I was there, we need some help with All Dogs Go to Heaven. We need some in-betweens done. Can you help out? And what are you going to say? No.
Of course, yeah.
So I was doing in-betweens till they found me something to do. Yeah. But it was only for like it wasn't even a couple of days. But anyway, they need the help.
No, it's cool. It's cool to do that too.
Yeah. So you decided you want to get out of that and you wanted to work on something that, where you could really do some character animation, like spread out a little bit. So what happened?
Yeah. So what happened was, I saw this booklet that this producer from the studio, she just came back. I remember she came back from Europe, from Annecy, maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But she brought this booklet about the Don Bluth Studios in Ireland.
Ah.
I don't know if you remember the booklet. It's amazing. I have a copy with me. It's
I would love to see that because I've seen the Disney booklets, but I've never seen the Don Bluth booklet. It's
not a thick book. It's just like a booklet that it's very thin. It shows all the departments of the studio, the history of Don Bluth, in the departments, because it was a booklet that they gave to people because when they were hiring people, they want people to be interested in the studio.
Sure.
And I remember going to her room at this Briquet studio here in São Paulo, and she had this booklet on the table, on her table there. And I was like, wow, that's the studio I want. Because I remember seeing The Secret of Nim on VHS, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, who are these people? I never heard of these people, and this is the best movie I've ever seen in the animation. I want to work for them.
Right.
That's what I wanted. Right. I forgot Disney by that time, because when I saw that, I was like, I want to work for these people. Don Bluth, I don't know who they are, but because I didn't know the history of them. I just saw the movie,
Right.
And I saw these names: Don Bluth, John Pomeroy, Gary Goldman.
Yeah.
And I was blown. For me, it was like I had to work for these people. And then when I saw the booklet on this producer's table, I was like, this is the people. This is the studio from the people who did that movie. I want to work for them. So I borrowed, and I got the address in the back. And my plan was, okay, I want to work for them. So my plan was to save my money for 1 year and prepare my portfolio. For 1 year, almost a year, I prepared my portfolio, and I saved my money because it was very difficult to save money. So I was able to, after one year, to get my plane ticket and save like $1,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And I had a portfolio, So I just flew to Ireland, to Dublin, and I knocked on the door and asked for a job. And it was very interesting because they were like, no, what are you doing here? Like at the reception, right? I went to the reception, said, I tried to ask them, can I show my portfolio? Can I meet Don Bluth?
Right.
And they said, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to go back to Brazil and send your portfolio. And if you like, we'll call you. And I said, but listen, I'm here in front of you. I'm here.
Right.
And I just came over. No, it doesn't work that way. Nobody knew what to do. They were like calling people, and the receptionist called somebody who came down, and she had a dictionary because I didn't speak English very well at the time.
Right.
And this lady came with a Spanish dictionary, which doesn't work because they speak Portuguese.
Right.
It's not Spanish. So they try, and I tried to explain what I wanted. And I begged, listen, I have a portfolio. I want to show Don Bluth. And they, after 1 hour, I said, no, just okay, come back tomorrow.
Right.
So I went back to the hotel. I couldn't sleep.
Right.
So I came back in the next morning. Yeah. The same thing. No, just go back to Brazil, send the portfolio. And I begged more. And then Don Bluth came in.
Right.
And he said, hi. But I froze. I couldn't do anything. I didn't talk to him. I just froze. Oh, it's Don Bluth. He's the man I want to meet. And he just walked in, and that was it. And then I begged even more and more. And I think they had so much of me. They said, okay, just wait. They took my portfolio inside.
Right.
And after 10 minutes, they called me in to come in.
Right.
So actually, I was with my friend. I had a friend from Brazil who came over with me.
Right.
And so it was me and my friend begging them.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend Edson Gonçalves, he's like an animator too.
Yes.
And so it was me and him begging to show our work. So, but then after we begged so much, they couldn't take it. They said, okay, just wait. So they took our portfolios. They called us in like 10 minutes after.
Right.
And went upstairs. Don Bluth had our portfolios open on the table. And he asked, okay, who's this portfolio here? It was my portfolio.
Right.
I said, this is mine. He said, you're going to be an animator. You're hired. Just like on the spot.
Wow.
And my friend was like, okay, you're going to be Sandro's assistant. But I never used an assistant before. So I never used my friend Edson.
Right.
So he was hired.
Right.
And it was amazing because I was hired as an animator. I thought I was going to be hired as a cleanup artist.
Right. You thought you were going to go from the bottom rung again.
Work my way up, right?
Yeah.
I was hired as an animator.
And how old were you? When
19.
You went? 19 at that point, right? Okay.
Yeah, I worked for Briquet Films from when I was 15, from 15 to 19 when they decided to.
Wow.
And then it was amazing because I think Don was very impressed. Just the fact that we came all the way from South America with our own money to ask for work, you know.
You're in good company because Ward Kimball, his story is very similar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he came down to the studio, and I don't think he lived. I think he was living with his aunt or something, or he was living with a family member in Los Angeles, and he came down the studio, and it was either he got a job or he was going to go back to where he came from. That's why I remember it. And he begged at the, and they took a look at his portfolio and then they hired him on the spot.
Yeah. So you should never give up, right?
Yeah. Well, it's great. There's so many of these stories that I hear, a lot of them are very similar. And it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter if you're from Europe or South America, whatever. It's all, the stories are very similar, and it's great. It's great that you persevered and you really pushed. And I'll tell you, you hear it all the time. Perseverance is so important, Yeah,
it's funny how somebody like a receptionist or somebody who's not an artist might be a problem. If I had given up just because she told me you have to go back and come, see the portfolio.
Right.
It wasn't even an artist who said that. So that's why you have to,
you got to really know.
You try to talk to an artist,
Let me. I'll just tell you a quick story about me because I was working for Ralph Bakshi. You know who he is,
right?
And so at the time they were doing Roger Rabbit, and I guess Dale Bear was heading up the unit in Los Angeles.
Yep. Right.
And the person I called up, he just passed away. I think it was Bill Dennis, who was the guy in, he was the gatekeeper. I think that was the guy. And so anyway, I called up and I said, I heard about this project. I'd like to get on it. And he totally discouraged me. He said, no, he said, no, we have all the people we need or whatever. But a few years later, after Roger Rabbit, I ended up working on Prince and the Pauper. I was animating.
Oh, cool.
I got that, and I was working at Bluth at that time, and I was freelancing. So anyway, somebody told me, they're looking for people to freelance on it. And so I went down to Dale's studio, which was on, I think it was on Cahuenga. It was like almost across from Hanna-Barbera. And so anyway, I go in there, and Dale, he brings me in, he looks at the portfolio, and he goes, "Where were you a couple of years ago?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, and he said, "I could have used you on Roger Rabbit." Wow. And so it was a compliment, but at the same time, thinking back, and I'm like going, well, I tried to get in, but they, whoever was the gatekeeper there wouldn't even consider me, so it was really, really kind of weird. But he said, I could use you in animation. I could put you in cleanup. I could put you, and it was, he said, what do you want to do? I said, animation. So they gave me some scenes of Mickey and Donald to do over there on that. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's good.
But
It's good that people know that you have to sometimes try to get to talk to the
man.
artist, to the
Yeah.
producer. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
You got
Or
to.
that,
Yeah,
the
it's
director.
yeah. I mean, if you know if you really want to do something, you got to really push because
Yes,
the only person looking out for you is you. And
exactly.
yeah. So anyway, but no, it's a great story. So you got hired by Don, and they made you what, a junior animator or did
Well, no,
just gave it?
just an animator. Yeah, an animator. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
And the funny thing was, I was expecting to work with those names I saw in the Secret of Name, like John Pomeroy, Linda Miller, all those top names.
They were all in Los Angeles.
But
at
they're
that
not.
time.
They're not there. I was like, there's nobody here that I remember seeing the names from the movies.
Yeah, I was working with those guys.
You were right. Yes.
Yeah, because Linda was in Los Angeles, and John was leading off. Lorna was there, and who else was there? Larry Leaker. So
Larry. Yes.
yeah. So we had a good number.
The people I wanted to work with, you were working with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Lorna was my directing animator for a little while. So
who was the directing animator?
Lorna Palmer.
Lorna, yes, okay.
Or Lorna Cook.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So you got in. So who was overseeing you? Were you
my first direct animator was Don himself.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
I got to work with him, and it's funny because the first scene I did, which I like to say that because it doesn't happen at Disney at all when you start.
Right.
The first shot that Don gave me was a close up of the character crying.
Oh wow!
And it was a close up. At Disney, you always start with the background characters, or
right.
If they don't know you, they give like background characters, or
they give the animals in the distance moving or crowd scenes. Yeah.
You could have to prove yourself, right? Don was like the first shot close up, and I did the shot, and based on live action, they had some live action. I never had worked with live action before,
right?
But I tried. I tried to push the poses and everything.
Now, that was Rockadoodle, right?
No, that was a Troll in Central Park.
Troll in Central Park, yeah.
Yeah, that was my first film.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so I did a shot of Stanley, the kid.
Yes.
Crying, and Don said, I showed Don the monitor, and he's like, "Yes, fantastic. He loved it. He approved. Right? No change. It's like,
wow,
amazing."
Yeah.
And then first shot, and then second shot, did the villain Ginorga. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, Queen Ginorga. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember her.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I did a scene with her doing something, and Don, something I was never familiar with. So, like here in Brazil, if I did something wrong in the drawings, the animators would scream at me, would tell me, "You don't know how to draw. You're stupid. You should go. You should forget this."
Right.
And I remember I screwed up the in-betweens for one animator here, and he almost got me fired. That kind of environment I was here.
Yeah.
When I got to Don, and Don had some suggestions, and he asked me, "Sandro, can I go over drawings and give you some suggestions?" I was like, "Of course I want that." Don't even ask, But was there like a contrast?
Mm-hmm.
Over here at the time, people were like, really, they would scream at you if you made a mistake. And Don, he was asking me if he could give me suggestions. I was like,
yeah, it's more nurturing.
So it's like totally different.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's a big deal because I think they
was like
no, I think I think people really care. You see that in their work. Obviously you cared, and he was I'm sure he was looking at it. He was wanted to make suggestions to what you were doing, and but I think he realized the effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a director also, so he could say anything he wanted.
Sure.
About the shot, right?
Right.
And I was still learning,
Mm-hmm.
So for me it was amazing. The contrast was totally different, the opposite of here, working here at the time. Mm-hmm. So I started working as an animator, and after a while, I was given to another supervising animator, and Don, she actually moved from the main studio to a satellite studio, like a few miles away
Right.
from the main studio. I never understood why much.
I know why.
Oh, you know why? Because I never understood, because, the way he was directing us was by sending us tapes.
Mm-hmm.
He would record him talking about every shot.
Right.
And he's, like, for example, in this shot, the character does this, you should do this, and he would give us poses, right?
Right. So,
but
like,
you have to get the tape to see what you need to do. You couldn't talk to him anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think he would do that because he was always interrupted, and what I heard was he used to get away because sometimes he would be working on the next film.
Mm.
So like you were doing Troll, you might have been, I don't know if it was the beginning or the middle of it. But he'd be either storyboarding the next sequence, and he had to get away to kind of get that material ready in order to feed the machine, because I know how it was when I was at Bluth. There was always people, because I was, I would talk to people all the time. So they'd come into the office like around 9, 10 o'clock. I get like assistants and other animators coming in wanting to talk.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times I used to go to the studio early to just focus on, get maybe 3 or 4 hours in to animate before people started like flooding in. So yeah, that was I can understand that, because I'm sure they were coming at him with questions from all sides,
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes sense now, because the way he was directing was like from a distance,
Yeah. So you started working on Troll, and you were there for the whole duration of that, right?
Yes, I worked for almost for 4 years in Ireland. I worked on that one, then the Thumbelina was the next one,
right?
And then after Thumbelina, we started the Penguin film that we couldn't finish.
Right.
I didn't finish,
right,
because of problems, and then from there, he basically moved everybody who wanted to go to Arizona when they set up Fox Animation.
Right. So you were in Phoenix. I was just in Phoenix about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
Phoenix, Arizona?
It was just outside of Phoenix. So, but it was a beautiful desert area, so.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing place there.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to pass by Don's old studio to see what, if it was still there, but.
You mean the Fox Animation Studio?
Yeah. I wanted to see if the building was still there. But,
the building's still there, but it's empty.
Yeah.
There's nobody there.
Nobody there. How did that work out? Did he just approach everybody, approach the staff?
Yeah, okay. The studio in Ireland was having problems. In fact, at the end, we didn't get paid for a few weeks of work. They didn't have any money anymore. It's a big mess, and people are starting to leave.
Yeah.
They couldn't make payroll anymore, so they decided to. Well, they had talked to the guys from Fox, and they decided to go. So they approached everybody. They said, "Okay, if you want to come, we cannot. I mean, you have to tell us that you want to come with us." So you had to kind of apply for a job. But of course, he wanted everybody, but you had to officially apply for a job.
Right.
So everybody did, of course.
Yeah.
So they moved everybody to Phoenix, basically.
So they paid for your move.
Oh, yeah, they did, yeah.
Wow, so I'm sure there was some compensation for that, too, that was kind of built into that pick up from what you weren't getting paid before, I would think. Right?
Well, to be honest, I started getting paid the same, but the problem was I didn't know how the U.S. worked, and the tax situation is very different. So I was making less money because of the tax, after tax,
Right.
And I didn't understand that. Nobody told me about taxes.
Right.
So I was making more money in Ireland than in the US. So I went to Gary Goldman and said, "Listen, I don't know what happened, but I'm not making the same money anymore. I'm making much less." And then they explained to me about taxes. I was like, "Oh, wow, okay. I wish I knew that before."
Sure.
But I was making less, no way.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, but it was okay because they had the bonus system, and I was able to compensate with the bonus.
So, like, if you
for extra footage, extra footage.
What was your footage quota over there when you went to work on Anastasia in Arizona?
I think we had to do 10 feet a week. I think.
Okay.
I think my average was like 10, but I could do more.
Right.
So the extra footage was all bonus for us. So they paid us extra for the extra footage.
Right. Well, that's neat. I know, they had that system at Sullivan Bluth in Burbank. And
they had the same system. Yeah.
They had the same system. And there was one animator, and I won't say who he is, but he was like the king of footage over there because he was, I don't know what he was doing. He was buying a house or something. So he ended up just putting out all this footage and getting paid like a super bonus like every week, every week. I think they did it on a monthly average.
Right.
To figure that out. But
yeah, in fact, I didn't make that much because I wasn't very clever. Maybe I put so much work in my animation. I did so many drawings that my footage wasn't as high as other people.
Right.
And then after a while, I realized, some people are making so much money with the footage because they had a system where they use assistants a lot.
Right.
And I don't use assistant a lot.
Right. You're
my friend had like 4 or 5 assistants at the same time. He would be working on the like 4 or 5 shots at the same time. So one person had one shot, another person had another shot.
Right.
And he was like doing another shot. So he made so much money, my friend.
Right.
But I wasn't clever that way, So it's okay.
I think it sounds like you were more concerned with the quality of the drawing, and you wanted to kind of keep that,
Yes.
And I think Milt Kahl did that too, but Milt got to the point where he was really fast. He also had really good assistants that could follow him up.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, but my friend who did so much footage,
mm-hmm.
he did great scenes too.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt that. It's just it's almost like you want to. It's almost like your baby. You want to hold it close, And
I don't know. I just think that some people, they have like a system that they figure out the system that works really well for production.
Yeah.
And I was never that.
I found some animators they'll do the keys, and then they'll tie down like every couple of drawings,
right,
for the rough. And then they'll do partials on the rough in betweens. Yeah. So they'll do maybe an arm or maybe just a feature on the face, whatever, and kind of just pass that along. And
that's what he did, my friend. He did that.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's a perfect system.
Right.
I don't know. It never worked for me that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody works differently,
Totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it's all fine. It's. Your motivations are different,
Yes.
So, but that's perfectly fine. I think that's wonderful that you want to keep it, all together and kind of control it more, Mm-hmm. So, how was it like working on Anastasia?
Okay. Not the happiest time for me. I wasn't very happy.
Okay.
Because first of all, I was making less money than Ireland.
Right.
That was like the big thing. And they didn't want to raise my salary at all.
Right.
So that was a big shock. It's like, oh, wow, okay. And then the second was Don. By that time, Don was a little different. And he shot the whole thing in live action, like a movie,
right.
A real movie.
Yeah.
Talk about even the camera movement. Like, it's just like a live action movie.
Right.
And we had to use the stats, the live action. We had to use it per se. We couldn't change it too much.
Wow.
And sometimes you want to change a few things because you're an animator, you have ideas.
Yeah, you're creative.
You have your acting choices that you'd like to see on the screen. But he would say, no, just do the same thing that the live action actor did. So basically, we're tracing, most of the time we're tracing. I think only my friend Len Simon, who did the villain, mm-hmm. he was more free. And the guy who did the
bat.
The bat? I don't know. It's a bat, right? I don't know. So the
Yeah.
The sidekick character.
Yes.
Yes, they were having fun, but I was doing Anastasia and the guy, the main guy.
Right.
So we had to use the stats. So I wasn't very happy. And by the time I was thinking, okay, well, what happened was I was working, doing my footage and working, but not like really enjoying it.
Yeah.
But it was okay. But then I realized, okay, the animation I want to do, which is in my mind, they are doing at Disney.
Mm-hmm.
I know at Disney they're doing that.
Right.
Because I see the films. I want to do that kind of animation.
Right.
So I was starting planning my portfolio, planning to go to Disney.
Yeah.
So I started planning my, okay, I'm going to go to Disney, and so I'm going to prepare a new portfolio. And then what happened was I had a contract that I couldn't leave my contract. I couldn't leave the studio because I had a contract.
Right.
I couldn't break the contract. So they made it very hard for me to leave.
Right.
So what happened was they needed one more supervising animator to deal with this Filipinos. They brought some Filipinos artists, from the Philippines,
right.
And nobody wanted to work with them, and they asked me, Sandro, would you be able to take this group here and be their supervising animator? I said, yeah, of course. But to do that, I made a deal that I could leave at a certain date. I had a date to leave. Okay,
right.
I can't break my contract. If I do this, I want to break my contract and leave at this time. And they agreed. So was like a trade. I became a supervising animator to work with this team,
right,
to be able to break my contract. But I love the work with the team. They were very great people,
right,
and I was able to help them. I was very exciting because I could see them growing as an artist, and they were getting great footage. The quality was getting high. I was very happy about that.
Right.
So
were they animating?
What?
Were they animating or
animators? Yeah.
Oh, they were animators.
Yeah, they're like, I think it was their first feature film.
Wow.
They used to do TV animation. They came from TV, but they're very talented people, and they were very they listened to you. They wanted to do a good job. So right. They're amazing to work with. Wow. Top people. At the end, they were top people.
Wow.
And they did great footage. So I finished that, and the date came by that I could leave.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me if I wanted to stay. I said, no, I need to leave. And then I went to Disney because I had sent my portfolio. They accepted.
Right.
And so I just moved from there to Burbank.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Hey, well, thank you, Sandro. Sandro will be back next week. It will be part 2 of our 3-part interview, so please come back for that. Should be a whole lot of fun. Hey, is there anybody you'd like me to interview for the Cartoonerific podcast? Well, if there is, please send me a note. It's Brian at cartoonerific.com. That's Brian, Brian, and then Cartoonerific, cartoonerific.com. And I'll see what I can do. Anyway, what you should know is that some people are very pleased to come on and do a podcast interview, and then you get the flip side. Some people are a little shy, or they don't feel they're very important, or they're just not good on mic. And so those people kind of refrain from doing it. And that's okay. I respect all of them. But doesn't mean we won't stop trying. So just want you to know that. Anyway, if you really like what you're listening to, please subscribe or tell a friend. Very important. Anyway, this is Brian Mitchell. And I want you to have a great day. I want you to have an excellent week. And thank you all, once again, for tuning in to the Cartoonerific podcast. See ya.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.